Well, hello Riven mains and Yasuo mains alike. I am the Nightwing, Way of Life Esports, coming at you guys with another League of Legends video. I felt like I needed to do this video after the TSM loss that I knew that they would inevitably take to Clutch Gaming, given their recent form that they had shown over the summer split, when it looked so good for them in the spring split and everybody was riding a TSM high, which I felt like was going to crash at some certain point, though I wasn't predicting that. It was just always in the back of my head that TSM would inevitably go through something when they lost that spring finals. It felt like after watching the spring finals and after watching the episode on TSM Legends that you inevitably see something that wasn't going to get repaired to a certain extent. And this goes into a long-winded, drastic change that TSM went through after last year. So to really get the full grasp and full circle of what actually may or may not have happened, we're going to have to scale it back a bit, because I felt like people really lost why they even got to this point, and I really feel like people need to understand and really need to stop being morons about the situation and understand that this was a problem happening in the long run for TSM. Now, let's scale back to when TSM lost to Misfits in their tiebreaker game to get out of the group, and people need to remember, even if TSM beat Misfits in that tiebreaker game, they would have faced SKT, and there's no way you're going to tell me that TSM would have brought SKT to 5 games. They would have gotten absolutely destroyed. I preferred Misfits to beat them because I felt like Misfits had a better shot at beating them anyway. Remember, TSM in Worlds 2017 looked abysmal, and they did win a few games. That was more off the back end of other teams just not really being as strong to close out games. It was more on their own personal issues rather than TSM just beating better. So let's take a look at then and scaling it towards now, because I feel like you'll understand something. Alright, so let's go. So after TSM lose to Misfits in that tiebreaker game, they choose to let go of the roster with Sven, Scarin, Hanser, Double Lift, and Biofrost. This roster had previously won 3 back-to-back titles. Double Lift had missed out on one of the titles because he had chose to stream in that split as well. So you have to factor in this TSM roster, mostly with Double Lift, won 3 titles, except for one in which where Wild Turtle played in that bot lane with Biofrost, and then that TSM roster went to MSI 2017 and also lost a tiebreaker game to make sure that they didn't make the group stage. So after their loss to Misfits, they decided to blow up the roster, and people really still to this day need to understand TSM had to do that. There have been, many talks past then about, there had been a lot of issues with the team. It looked really Cinderella-ish to us, the viewers, but during their actual, scrims and gameplay and after their big matches, I had even heard Bjergsen in a couple of TSM, videos and, other videos that have featured Bjergsen talking about, the team had issues, but winning made everything better. And I feel like people just didn't understand it. They thought that everything was Disney princess, Frozen, everything was better on the outside. No, teams have issues, and even if they're winning, have issues. And they've said this before, the team wasn't perfect. And the issue about why they kicked Double Lift and Biofrost was not because of underperformance. People need to understand, by that current point in time, they had already ran back the same roster twice. They're not going to run back the same roster 3 times. That's ridiculous. But people are like, well, they won North America 3 times. They don't care about winning North America. And I know people like to meme about them about winning North America. Understand this, and it's just like with Cloud9, CLG, and Team Liquid, now that they've all won titles, and multiple titles, because 2 is multiple, it's plural. People need to understand that you have to understand that organizations care about one specific thing, and that's doing well at Worlds. And doing well at Worlds is above all else. TSM has 7 NA titles. 7. Do you understand how many titles that is? They basically have just about as many titles as there are splits in the North American LCS. That's ridiculous, right? So you have to understand that they didn't really care about winning North America anymore. And at that current point in time, Doublelift and Biofrost were weaker than Sven and Mithy. Getting Sven and Mithy at that current point in time was an upgrade over Doublelift and Biofrost. Whether you choose to agree with my opinion or not, that's the facts. That's the case of it. But Sven and Mithy played better than Doublelift and Biofrost all year long. The only reason why Sven and Mithy didn't make it out of their group was because of 1907 Fenerbahce being in that group. It was literally the group of death. They had already lost to Samsung twice, where they couldn't get a tiebreaker game to beat them again. And you also had RNG in that group, which was playing out of their minds. So yeah, Sven and Mithy were way better than Biofrost and Doublelift actually. So when they initially announced that they were kicking Doublelift and Biofrost, I wasn't even surprised. They were better. It was an upgrade. They were a really good bot lane at that current point in time, and they were not going to run back the same roster 3 times. That's ridiculous. They didn't care about winning North America. I don't know where people get this. Well, they should have never kicked Doublelift and Biofrost. They failed at Worlds twice. Why would you keep them anymore? At that current point in time, you have to understand the context in which why they did it. And I am not going to fault them for that. I understood why they did it. Fans, people were all saying, revamp the roster. Oh, but just because it doesn't work to the where you like it, you are not going to be okay with it. It doesn't work that way. Everybody was saying they should revamp the roster. Kick Sven, kick Haunter, kick Doublelift, kick Biofrost. This is the tournament in which Doublelift memed couldn't hold his flash, right? Oh, but you wanted to keep this Doublelift, right? Because he got you titles. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. They weren't going to keep them. And looking back on it now, it wasn't the smart idea. But back then, this is the change that TSM fans and people wanted. Let's not just rewrite history here because it didn't pan out the way you thought, right? We're not going to do that here. All right, so after that, you guys know about the whole Cloud9 situation. I cannot even begin to fathom, and I watched the video. Remember, as a Cloud9 fan, and remember seeing Svenskeren, I kind of felt like he was going to be the Cloud9 jungler, because when they said that contracts had an issue with re-signing with the team, I already kind of felt like Svenskeren would be the jungler, because Svenskeren, when contract ended, and you saw him on Twitter going I can, talk to teams and stuff like that. We saw Svenskeren tweet a day afterwards, I already found a team, and I was like, wait a minute. This dude's coming to Cloud9 after completely inting in the World 2017 group stage. I was like, holy crap, Svenskeren's going to be our jungler. That's what I was already thinking, actually. And then he eventually does come to Cloud9, and I'm like, to be fair, I was skeptical. I'm not going to lie, I was skeptical, but I'm like, wait a minute. TSM kind of ruins junglers. I feel like Cloud9 will be a better fit for him. And lo and behold, World's semifinals. He couldn't make it out of group stage with TSM. He didn't even make it out of group stage with SK Gaming, but he makes it out of group stage with Cloud9, and he goes to World semifinals. So, I think in hindsight, that was a good decision by Jack to get Svenskeren, because he kind of, you could always tell when owners are looking at players, and maybe he felt like Svenskeren was getting the bad rep about being on TSM, and wanted to give Svenskeren that really nice try that he was deserving of. And hey, it worked out for him. Man, TSM probably wish they had Svenskeren now, but they'd probably ruin him. XD. Alright, so Haunter, I feel like they really didn't do Haunter that well. I'll kind of flash forward to the whole Broken Blade situation. People could not stop raving about Broken Blade. And people go well, he was really good in spring. Guys, you have to understand something. People are good for one split because of the meta, because of how good your team is playing, and because of individual skill. People were saying he was better than Licorice, better than Someday. What? Licorice, I kid you not, is the better player, and that's not fan bias, that's just looking at the games. Where is Broken Blade right now? Sitting on his computer, looking at the finals. Now, you could say the same thing about Licorice, during the spring split of this year, but then I can flip this on you. TSM shouldn't have been in that final. Cloud9 were 2-0 up and chose to go for a late game draft. Everybody, they themselves said we should have been in the finals. They were borderline just about to do what they did to TSM. Cloud9 were borderline what they did to CLG, and literally should have threw 3-0 to CLG minus the game 3 throw. What they did to CLG this past week is what they were going to be doing to TSM that spring split. But hey, they threw. And okay, people throw. That's not TSM fault. Cloud9 throws. You don't control those factors. TSM eventually go to the finals, and then Broken Blade. I feel like he played really good in summer. I'll say that. I feel like people gave him a little bit too harsh credit. He played pretty well, and I think he played better than Haunter, throughout the whole year. But what I will say is that I don't think there was a reason to change out Haunter. He could play multiple different styles. He was consistent. He was not only a powerhouse in lane. I don't really feel what was the need to change him out. I just don't feel like there was a need to change him. Other than the fact that he also 2 years from 2016 and 2017 back-to-back, when this is the must-have game for TSM to get out of the group, this dude locks in Jace and then loses twice. That's the only reason why I can think of that, So after that, you get toward the whole Mike Young situation. Him and Mithy have problems, and then TSM themselves go through the 2018 year without having any success, upset by Clutch, getting beaten by Cloud9 in the Gauntlet, Jensen denying Bjergsen his first Worlds run, at his first Worlds appearance in his entire career. Then you get to the point where you have this year, and this year, there's a lot of factors in, and I want to kind of bridge them all together. So let's go right there. So in spring, TSM announces that Smoothie is going to be with Sven. Mithy went to Origin. You get Broken Blade. And, when people talk about the whole Grig and Acadian situation, you have to scale it back toward the beginning of the year. Grig was the starting jungler for TSM. It wasn't Acadian. Acadian was supposed to play on the Academy team. And due to Grig's wrist issues, they chose to give it to Acadian. And then in summer, when they were giving them both, time to see who would be their starting jungler, I didn't feel personally bad for that, because looking at Grig's perspective, he was supposed to be the starting jungler in spring. It's only fair. I don't feel like that would be fair of them to not give him a shot when he was supposed to be their jungler from the beginning. So TSM start off kind of rocky. They go like 1-3 in like their first few weeks. Later on, they turn it around. They lose to Cloud9 twice in this split. They beat TL twice in the split, actually. This is when TSM had their little Fnatic run. Both TSM and Fnatic had looked very shaky, and then TSM later on, let's kind of like Fnatic, they had like an 11-game winning streak. TSM had a 10-game winning streak because they lost to Cloud9 as that last loss, and they completely just won everything else. After that, TSM, faced Echo Fox first round of the quarterfinals for spring. They beat them 3-1, and then they faced Cloud9. Cloud9 threw. I think everybody watching the series would know that Cloud9 threw. Licorice, everybody said they threw. Coaches, the analysts said they threw. Whatever. They get to spring because of someone else throwing. Whatever. That's not TSM's fault. You capitalize on people when they actually throw. Then they face TL. They're the ones in the Cloud9 position. They're the ones that are 2-0 up. And then later on, TL started ramping it up toward, the back end of the best of 5. And then after that, TSM win 3-2. And then this is when everything starts to change. And this is when things start going from like bad to worse. And, you have Sven making the game losing play of getting caught out at the Baron. And then right after that, they come into summer. They look okay at the beginning parts of the split. It didn't look as bad. Then you start factoring in, they started switching out Grig and Acadian. They were doing really well with Grig. They were actually doing well with Grig over Acadian for a bit of there. Like, Acadian would lose, and then they would play Grig, and then, it would be that type of situation. Then, after that, you got to the point where Rift Rivals, I feel like Rift Rivals is really where things start to take a drastic turn for the worse. Because once they got railed, they got absolutely fisted blasted by those EU teams. They had the most abysmal record out of any of the NA teams. Cloud9 with sick players had better gold differentials at 10 than TSM did. That's ridiculous. All the Cloud9 members were sick. That is pitiful. And then right after that, they settle with the Kaden as their starting jungler. Every game after that looks really bad. They went off Baron steals. They went off people throwing. They went off people just completely inting in their games. They win because the other team messes up. That's how they got their wins. Then they come to the situation where they're not having really good cohesion. Smoothie and Sven they get talked to in interviews where they're saying that they're basically all playing at different, levels, where levels that aren't the same. They're all playing just at a different type of mentality. Everyone's trying to play their own game. And I remember reading interviews like that from players that started off to have synergy problems with their team. When you read stuff like that, people need to understand that that's not a good thing. When someone says me and my teammates are playing at two different ways and we're all have our own way, when we have our own way, we want to play the game. That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing at all. I've read that but several times, and of many teams over the past years I've been watching League, and it immediately means bad. It's never meant a good thing. And after that, we get to the point where TSM completely start just doing so bad. They just go 1-1 with losses that should have been 0-2. They should have went 0-2 for 3 weeks straight. But North American quality, hey, it's not going to get them there. So after that, they choose Spica for week 9. Everybody's just like, what the frack? What the frack? They bench Acadian, and then you have the little bit of rumor spreading around that, coaches decided to bench Acadian. What's really interesting about benching Acadian is that they don't bench the player that lost them a title, but they're benching a player that got them to the title. It makes sense, right, on TSM? Yeah, real sense. You don't bench the guy that got you to the finals. You bench the guy that you obviously keep the guy that lost you the title. Hey, makes sense, right? So they play Spica. They have these bot lane subs. I know they weren't going to play the bot lane subs. I don't know what people were thinking when they thought, oh yeah, they're going to bring in Tactical and Blaze Olive. And what's his name? Blaze Olive. Treats and Tactical, right? Whatever their bot lane was called, right? Treats and... I'm pretty sure it's called Treats and Tactical, because Blaze Olive is the mid laner for the Academy team. So... yeah, they don't even use the subs. They lose to Clutch 3-1. They even look worse, actually. I don't even know how that's even possible. But all of this culminates to, how did it go so bad? I felt like people really, really, really got tunneled on that spring split. It's like, guys, teams can peak and have really good runs toward the end of splits. It happens in sports all the time. They could have been just good because of the meta, because of the patch change, because of maybe they understood this patch a lot better than other teams. There's always factors in. Just because they finish second in spring doesn't mean they're going to finish second in the next split. That's not how that works, though. You do factor in teams change players, teams change themselves, teams get better. That's literally the game. Also, I can make a point to this. Remember when I said Fnatic were going to be better when me and JTH did our EU power rankings and people called me nuts? Well, when I said Fnatic would be better than Origin, where's Fnatic now compared to where's Origin now? Hey, I see Origin not in playoffs, but I see Fnatic in second place. I mean... it's the same thing. It's like I felt like Fnatic were the better team than Origin. They, verbatim, have the better players, the more competent players, and that's how it panned out. Spring Split can be a big, eye blinder to a lot of fans, because they seem to think that just because someone finishes really high in that split means that it can just literally be replicated next split. So I can give you another example. Remember the LPL? Oh, yeah, this one's going to be spicy. Remember J-Dog? JD, or I call him J-Dog. That's what the fans call him. JDG. Remember they had that incredible run? They beat RNG. They beat Flunk plus Phoenix. They beat their first round match of when, they get the little game 1 bye or whatever. And then, remember how they lost to IG 3-0 in the final? And remember how... JDG got just completely ass blasted at Rift Rivals, and then where are JDG now? They're not even in playoffs, right? Kind of like how my predictions pan out. Fnatic were the better team than Origin in spring, and they're definitely showing it now. Sometimes you can have upsets, and sometimes certain teams can take another split to build off of. That's what we're seeing it now. Cloud9 were the better team last split than them, and now they're in the finals again. That's why I had Cloud9 at second place. It wasn't because of fan bias, because I'm actually thinking about this stuff logically. People are looking at the game results rather than looking at the actual quality of the games. You need to understand that there's a clear difference between the two. And then right after that, we get to all of this new TSM type of situation where, you know, coaches benching players and Reginald coming in and all of these other things, and you have to understand that these things are applicable to certain situations, and then you get to where it is now. With that being said, right now, currently, at the time of me recording this video, TSM is not out of contentions of Worlds 2019. They are in the Gauntlet. They'll most likely be the final boss for the Gauntlet because they finished second in spring. Most likely, they might be playing round 2 or whatever, because it's most likely going to be FlyQuest playing the first round because they have the lowest championship points, and then it's going to be, you know, depending on who wins out of the match of CLG versus, you know, Clutch. We'll see how that pans out. And then TSM has one more shot to make Worlds 2019. But even after that, let's say if they don't make Worlds, or let's say if they do, if they fail out, let's say they go through the plan stage and they, you know, beat the plan stage team, and let's say they obviously get out of groups, right? Whatever, right? I just don't have it in me to tell myself they're going to keep the same team after what happened in this year. I don't feel like Sven is going to stay. I don't even feel like Broken Blade would stay mostly. I feel like people would say, like, you know, Bjergsen is going to switch teams. And then people use the argument of why would he switch teams if the other orgs aren't better than TSM? You don't know that if any other org is better than TSM. You don't know that because he's never switched. You can't use the argument of, well, TSM is Cloud9 and 100 Thieves and Team Liquid a better org than TSM. Well, you don't know that. He's never switched teams. He switched teams once in his whole career, going from Copenhagen Wolves to TSM. So you don't know if the other orgs would be better for him, because he's rarely, if not ever, changed any teams. So we can't be like, would Bjergsen be better off without TSM or with them? You can't use that, because that just creates a fallacy in your argument. Because let's say if I was in his shoes, let's just say I was a really good pro player at League, and I was in Bjergsen's shoes, and people were like, well, why don't you just leave? Is it better for you to leave your current org and play for another org? There's two different routes you can take that in. You just stay, and they build teams around Bjergsen. They did that a lot. How many times are they gonna build rosters around this guy? How many times? How many times are you gonna do it? Or he just goes to a different team, new change of scenery, new coaches, new org, and possibly, which has worked out several times with people, pan out very, very well for them. Those are decisions he has to make. I would say change orgs, because he's not getting the results he wants with TSM. The fact of the matter is that Sneaky has a higher placing than Bjergsen at Worlds. It should tell you something about how TSM is. Jensen has been playing not like marginally less. It's been like Jensen has played less years than Bjergsen and has made further international competition. He has made it further internationally than Bjergsen has. You know, like, that's crazy to think about, is that Jensen has made it further than Bjergsen. So when people say Jensen is worse than Bjergsen, you probably need to look at gameplay and look at results, because you're not really thinking clearly. You're thinking with a biased personality. And how about Doublelift never got out of groups with TSM? Got out of groups when he played with Team Liquid. That's just the facts, man. Tenscairn didn't get out of groups with TSM. Got out of groups with Cloud9. Hey, I'm just saying here. See you guys later. Like, comment, subscribe. Most of all, enjoy. I am the Nightwing Way of Life Esports signing out. See you guys later. Bye. Have a good day.